Hey, Downtimers, I scored all these styrofoam coolers on a Thursday night. I saw them sitting out curbside at a neighbor's house and decided they might work pretty well for an ice cavern I'm setting up, or I was setting up, for our game on Saturday. So this was Thursday night, so it meant I had a Friday afternoon and that was it. So this is going to be a short and sweet kind of thing that you can do in a pinch to add some ice terrain to an ice cavern or any kind of ice adventure, icy or cold adventure you'd like to share with your players. You'll notice here I have a long knife and a short knife. I'm using the long knife for, of course, the big cuts here on the corners of the styrofoam container. Now, a lot of people say that this type of foam is not good for crafting. It actually is very good for crafting ice terrain. I'd say probably the best. It already has a good kind of frosty texture to it, and it just really cuts really well. One word of advice though, you definitely want to make sure you work on this outside. It is very messy, as you can see, and you want to make sure you have on a mask. You do not want to get any kind of styrofoam in your lungs, so definitely make sure you have on a mask. And you notice the way I'm going at this with the short blade to make texture, it sprays everywhere. It's super light, so be sure you have a mask on, be sure you're outside. Okay, so I'm making a lot of texture in these with the short blade, and you see I'm just scraping over using the tip of the short blade to make small little holes in the pieces of foam. And it works really well to give it texture. It's super fast to do too. If you only have an hour or two and you want to make some ice columns like I was doing here, I wanted something kind of tall and narrow. I didn't want something that would take a lot of room on the table, so I want to make them pretty narrow. So that's why they're shaped like that. Normally I would make columns maybe a little bit wider, but I knew going into this that there's going to be a lot of negative space in this cavern, and I was going to use the columns in the boss area, which is a much larger area, but still there wasn't going to be a whole lot of space. So just keep the end result in mind, what you're looking for your particular settings. And I knew that this particular scene was going to be kind of a close environment and not a lot of positive space for the players to have fun with, so that's why I chose this size. Also, when you're working with this, the short knife works better for texturing, the long knife works better for the original cuts. You'll see here in a minute, you don't want to throw away any of the styrofoam remains from this scraping and this work, because we'll be able to use all this stuff later on to make some more ice scattering terrain. And also, this is the quickest styrofoam technique that I use. Cut it, texture it, and then of course we're going to have to base it. So for basing, I like to use clear plastic, and of course you'll want to make sure it's a flat piece. This was from a Dr. Scholl's tennis shoe insert. I'm going to use this as a bunch of bases for my styrofoam ice terrain pieces. You want to make sure you get the flat parts though, and just cut them to whatever shape or size you're looking for. When I'm working with ice terrain, I like to work with very sharp angles. And there's the Mod Podge, and that's my Mod Podge mix. I usually do about 50-50, so 50 Mod Podge, 50% water, and I use this as a glue and as a sealant. So I will simply put the Mod Podge on the plastic, and then put whatever styrofoam I'm working with on top of that, and then I will simply, once that's dry, I'll give it about an hour or two to dry, grab the brush and put a quick little layer on top of it, and it's done. Now, if you have more time and you're not in a big hurry like I was, you can use a glue gun and add a layer of hot glue on your ice terrain pieces, and it will really look nice. And I'll show you guys some pieces later on in the video where you'll see where I actually had some time, a little more time to work with some other ice terrain pieces, and I used hot glue on those pieces and they came out a little bit nicer. But if you're kind of rushed and don't have a whole lot of time to work with, these pieces come out pretty nice, as you can see here. And really all I was going for here was, remains, maybe a little pile of ice and frost. And basically I'm just making these pieces just to give a little more flair or color, to kind of just go along with the theme. And you'll notice with the columns now, there's not a whole lot to grab on the plastic. So you want to really make sure you have a lot of Mod Podge down. And those, you want to make sure those are 100% dry before you try to seal them with the Mod Podge, because if they're not 100% dry, they will slip or pop off of the bases. So you might want to give those about 2 or 3 hours to dry completely before you put the Mod Podge seal on those. You don't have to seal these with Mod Podge, but I do recommend you do it, because if there are any loose pieces, they will come off on your terrain and so forth, or on your cloth or whatever you're using for the base of your scenes, and it just kind of makes a mess. So it's always a good idea to seal them up good, like I'm doing here. Now this piece had been dry for at least a day, so I decided to, it was good, very, very dry, so it was time to seal that up. And here is what we call a dilithium crystal in our game. This is a rather large crystal for miniature gaming, as you can see, but I decided it'd be perfect for this particular scene, what we're going through right now. I wanted to make kind of a pedestal for this, and I figured what better substance to use in an ice cave than an ice pedestal. So got some styrofoam and started working with it, and you notice I simply had to put the pointy end of the crystal into the styrofoam to make an indentation where I could see where the crystal would sit, and just had to work with my knives and kind of shave away little by little to where I was happy with the look. And once I was happy with the look, I simply needed to put a nice little layer of Mod Podge over that, and it's ready to go. I didn't even have to worry about a base because it's already very flat on the bottom. So, and it's definitely wide enough to sit on its own. It's very stable. Even though it's super light, it's very stable because it's pretty wide. So didn't even have to worry about a base for this one. Okay, and here are the other pieces I was talking about. I wanted to be sure to show you guys the pieces that I had a little more time to work with, and so I used hot glue on these after using the same techniques we just talked about. And as you can see, the hot glue really kind of brings out a little more flair and a little more of a icicle kind of look to it, to the pieces, and I really like that. You'll see texturing that I made. I was able to work with that with a hot glue gun and kind of make the icicles kind of hang out a little bit further away from the piece, and I really like that look. It's almost like an icy waterfall kind of look or flair to it. So pretty cool stuff. And this next piece here, I was really happy with this. This is probably my favorite ice terrain piece that I've made so far, and same techniques that we've talked about, plus lots of hot glue. Of course, the icicles, I made those beforehand. I have a granite tabletop, and I simply make the icicles on the granite and then hot glue those to the pieces. So super easy to work with. I don't even have to worry about wax paper. It comes right off the granite. And you notice I have a lot of texture in this piece, and it works really well with the icicle look. So if you have about an extra 20 minutes or so for each piece, I strongly advise you to put some hot glue on them as well. That's all for now, guys. If you would, give us a like, leave a comment, let me know what you think about these ice terrain pieces, and please subscribe. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.